Zambia.
Zambia/ʻzæmbiɛ/, officially the Republic of Zambia, is a landlocked country in southern Africa. The neighbouring countries are the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the north, Tanzania to the northeast, Malawi to the east, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana and Namibia to the south, and Angola to the west. The capital city is Lusaka, located in the south-central part of the country. The population is concentrated mainly around Lusaka in the south and the Copperbelt Province to the northwest. Originally inhabited by Cuisine peoples, the region which comprises modern Zambia was colonized during the Bantu expansion of the 13th century. After visits by European explorers in the 18th century, Zambia became the British protectorate of northern Rhodesia towards the end of the 19th century. For most of the colonial period, the country was governed by an administration appointed from London with the advice of the British South Africa Company. On October 24, 1964, the country became independent of the United Kingdom and then Prime Minister Kenneth Kaunda became the inaugural president. Kaunda's Socialist United National Independence Party, UNIP, maintained power from the 1964 until 1991. From 1972 to 1991 Zambia was a single-party state with the UNIP as the sole legal political party, with the goal of uniting the nation under the banner of One Zambia, One Nation. Kaunda was succeeded by Frederick Chiluba of the Social Democratic Movement for Multi-Party Democracy in 1991, during which the country saw a rise in social-economic growth and increased decentralization of government. Chiluba selected Levi Mnawasa as his successor. Mnawasa presided over the country from January 2002 until his death in August 2008, and is credited with initiating a campaign to reduce corruption and increase the standard of living. After Mnawasa's death, Rhodesia Banda presided as acting president before being elected president in 2008. He is the shortest-serving president, having held office for only 3 years. Patriotic Front Party leader, Michael Chilufya-Sata defeated Banda in the 2011 elections. In 2010, the World Bank named Zambia one of the world's fastest economically reformed countries. The Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, is headquartered in Lusaka.
Etymology.
The territory of what is now Zambia was known as Northern Rhodesia from 1911. It was renamed Zambia on the occasion of its independence, in 1964. The new name of Zambia was derived from the Zambezi River. Zambezi may mean God's River, which flows through the western region of the country and forms its southern border.
History. Pre-colonial.
The area of modern Zambia was inhabited by Khoisan hunter-gatherers until around AD 300, when the more technologically advanced migrating Bantu began to displace or absorb them. In the 12th century, major waves of Bantu-speaking immigrants arrived during the Bantu expansion. Among them, the Tonga people, also called Ba Tonga, Ba meaning men, were the first to settle in Zambia and are believed to have come from the east near the Big Sea. The Nkoya people also arrived early in the expansion, coming from the Lubalunda kingdoms located in the southern parts of the modern Democratic Republic of the Congo and northern Angola, followed by a much larger influx, especially between the late 12th and early 13th centuries. At the end of the 18th century some of them Banda migrated to Barotseland, Mongu. Upon the migration of, among others, the Sayenjal the Aluai and their leader, the Lichingamulam, were especially prized in Banda for their ability to fight. In the early 19th century, the Nsokolo people settled in the Mbala district of Northern Province. During the 19th century, the Ngoni and Sota peoples arrived from the south. By the late 19th century, most of the various peoples of Zambia were established in the areas they currently occupy. The arrival of Europeans was just yet another such influx. The earliest European to visit the area was Portuguese explorer Francisco de Leicester in the late 18th century. This territory, located between Portuguese Mozambique and Portuguese Angola, was claimed and explored by Portugal in that period. Other European visitors followed in the 19th century. The most prominent of these was David Livingstone, who had a vision of ending the slave trade through the 3Cs, Christianity, commerce and civilization. He was the first European to see the magnificent waterfall on the Zambezi River in 1855, naming them Victoria Falls after Queen Victoria. He described them thus: "Scenes so lovely must have been gazed upon by angels in their flight." Locally the falls are known as Masiotanya, or the thundering smoke, in the Lozi or Kololo dialect. The town of Livingstone, near the falls, is named after him. Highly publicized accounts of his journeys motivated a wave of European visitors, missionaries and traders after his death in 1873.
Northern Rhodesia.
In 1888, the British South Africa Company, BSA Company, led by Cecil Rhodes, obtained mineral rights from the Lichinga, the paramount chief of the Lozi or Bar Rhodes, for the area which later became northwestern Rhodesia. To the east, in December 1897, a section of the Ngoni, originally from Zululand, under Tsinko, the son of King Mxini, rebelled, but the rebellion was put down, and Mxini accepted the Pax Britannica. That part of the country then came to be known as northeastern Rhodesia. In 1895, Rhodes asked his American scout Frederick Russell Burnham to look for minerals and ways to improve river navigation in the region, and it was during this trek that Burnham discovered major copper deposits along the Kafue River. Northeastern Rhodesia and northwestern Rhodesia were administered as separate units until 1911, when they were merged to form the British colony of Northern Rhodesia. In 1923, the BSA Company ceded control of Northern Rhodesia to the British government after the government decided not to renew the company's charter. That same year, Southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, a conquered territory which was also administered by the BSA Company, became a self-governing British colony. In 1924, after negotiations, administration of Northern Rhodesia transferred to the British Colonial Office. In 1953, the creation of the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland grouped together Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia and Nyasaland, now Malawi, as a single semi-autonomous region. This was undertaken despite opposition from a sizable minority of the population, who demonstrated against it in 1960-61. Northern Rhodesia was the center of much of the turmoil and crisis characterizing the Federation in its last years. Initially, Harry Nkumbulo's African National Congress, ANC, led the campaign that Kenneth Kaunda's United National Independence Party, UNIP, subsequently took up. A two-stage election held in October and December 1962 resulted in an African majority in the Legislative Council and an uneasy coalition between the two African nationalist parties. The council passed resolutions calling for Northern Rhodesia's secession from the Federation and demanding full internal self-government under a new constitution and a new National Assembly based on a broader, more democratic franchise. The Federation was dissolved on December 31, 1963, and in January 1964, Kaunda won the only election for Prime Minister of Northern Rhodesia. The colonial governor, Sir Evelyn Hone, was very close to Kaunda and urged him to stand for the post. Soon after, there was an uprising in the north of the country known as the Lumpen Uprising, led by Alice Lenshina, Kaunda's first internal conflict as leader of the nation.
Post-independence.
Northern Rhodesia became the Republic of Zambia on October 24, 1964, with Kaunda as the first president. At independence, despite its considerable mineral wealth, Zambia faced major challenges. Domestically, there were few trained and educated Zambians capable of running the government, and the economy was largely dependent on foreign expertise. This expertise was provided in part by John Wilson CMG. There were over 70,000 Europeans resident in Zambia in 1964, and they remained of disproportionate economic significance. Kaunda's endorsement of Patriotic Front guerrillas conducting raids into neighbouring, southern, Rhodesia resulted in political tension and a militarization of the border, leading to its closure in 1973. However, the Kariba hydroelectric station on the Zambezi River provided sufficient capacity to satisfy the country's requirements for electricity, despite Rhodesian management. A railway to the Tanzanian port of Dar es Salaam, built with Chinese assistance, reduced Zambian dependence on railway lines south to South Africa and west through an increasingly troubled Portuguese Angola. Until the completion of the railway, however, Zambia's major artery for imports and the critical export of copper was along the Tanzam Road, running from Zambia to the port cities in Tanzania. The ʻzæmbiə oil pipeline was also built from Dar es Salaam to Ndola in Zambia. By the late 1970s, Mozambique and Angola had attained independence from Portugal. Rhodesia's predominantly white government, which issued a unilateral declaration of independence in 1965, accepted majority rule under the Lancaster House Agreement in 1979. Zambia's problems, however, were far from over. Civil strife in both Portuguese colonies and a mounting Namibian War of Independence resulted in an influx of refugees and compounded transportation issues. The Benguela Railway, which extended west through Angola, was essentially closed to Zambian traffic by the late 1970s. Zambia's support for anti-apartheid movements such as the African National Congress, ANC, also created security problems as the South African Defence Force struck at dissident targets during external raids. In the mid-1970s, the price of copper, Zambia's principal export, suffered a severe decline worldwide. In Zambia's situation, the cost of transporting the copper great distances to market was an additional strain. Zambia turned to foreign and international lenders for relief, but, as copper prices remained depressed, it became increasingly difficult to service its growing debt. By the mid-1990s, despite limited debt relief, Zambia's per capita foreign debt remained among the highest in the world. In June 1990 riots against Congo accelerated. Many protesters were killed by the regime in breakthrough June 1990 protests. In 1990 Congo survived an attempted coup, and in 1991 he agreed to reinstate multi-party democracy, having instituted one-party rule under the Kenya Commission of 1972, and following multi-party elections Congo was removed from office, see below. In the 2000s, the economy stabilized, attaining single-digit inflation in 2006 to 2007, real GDP growth, decreasing interest rates, and increasing levels of trade. Much of its growth is due to foreign investment in Zambia's mining sector and higher copper prices on the world market. All this led to Zambia being courted enthusiastically by aid donors, and saw a surge in investor confidence in the country.
Politics.
Politics in Zambia take place in a framework of a presidential representative democratic republic, whereby the President of Zambia is both head of state and head of government in a pluriform multi-party system. The government exercises executive power, while legislative power is vested in both the government and parliament. Zambia became a republic immediately upon attaining independence in October 1964. Since 2011, Zambia's president has been Michael Sata.
Subdivisions.
Zambia is divided into 10 provinces, each administered by an appointed deputy minister. Each province is subdivided into several districts with a grand total of 89 districts.
Geography.
Zambia is a landlocked country in southern Africa, with a tropical climate and consists mostly of high plateau, with some hills and mountains, dissected by river valleys. At 752,614 kilometers (290,586 square miles), it is the 39th largest country in the world, slightly smaller than the nation of Chile. The country lies mostly between latitudes 8 deg and 18 degs, and longitudes 22 deg and 34 dege. Zambia is drained by two major river basins, the Zambezi-Kafue Basin in the center, west and south covering about 3/4 of the country, and the Congo Basin in the north covering about 1/4 of the country. A very small area in the northeast forms part of the internal drainage basin of Lake Rukwa in Tanzania. In the Zambezi Basin, there are a number of major rivers flowing wholly or partially through Zambia, the Kabompo, Lungwabungu, Kafue, Luangwa, and the Zambezi itself, which flows through the country in the west and then forms its southern border with Namibia, Botswana and Zimbabwe. Its source is in Zambia but it diverts into Angola, and a number of its tributaries rise in Angola's central highlands. The edge of the Cuando River floodplain, not its main channel, forms Zambia's southwestern border, and via the Cope River that river contributes very little water to the Zambezi because most is lost by evaporation. Two of the Zambezi's longest and largest tributaries, the Kafu and the Luangwa, flow mainly in Zambia. Their confluences with the Zambezi are on the border with Zimbabwe at Chirundu and Luangwa town respectively. Before its confluence, the Luangwa River forms part of Zambia's border with Mozambique. From Luangwa town, the Zambezi leaves Zambia and flows into Mozambique, and eventually into the Mozambique Channel. The Zambezi falls about 100 meters, 328 feet, over the 1.6 kilometers, 0.99 miles, wide Victoria Falls, located in the southwest corner of the country, subsequently flowing into Lake Kariba. The Zambezi Valley, running along the southern border, is both deep and wide. From Lake Kariba going east it is formed by grabens and like the Luangwa, Mweru Luapula, Mweru Yntipa and Lake Tanganyika valleys, is a rift valley. The north of Zambia is very flat with broad plains. In the west the most notable being the Barrett's floodplain on the Zambezi, which floods from December to June, lagging behind the annual rainy season, typically November to April. The flood dominates the natural environment and the lives, society and culture of the inhabitants and those of other smaller, floodplains throughout the country. In eastern Zambia the plateau which extends between the Zambezi and Lake Tanganyika valleys is tilted upwards to the north, and so rises imperceptibly from about 900 m, 2,953 feet, in the south to 1,200 m, 3,937 feet, in the center, reaching 1,800 m, 5,906 feet, in the north near Mbala. These plateau areas of northern Zambia have been categorized by the World Wildlife Fund as a large section of the central Zambezi and Miombo woodlands ecoregion. Eastern Zambia shows great diversity. The Luangwa Valley splits the plateau in a curve northeast to southwest, extended west into the heart of the plateau by the deep valley of the Lunsempa River. Hills and mountains are found by the side of some sections of the valley, notably in its northeast the Nyika Plateau, 2,200 m or 7,218 feet, on the Malawi border, which extend into Zambia as the Mafunga Hills, containing the country's highest point, Kongara, 2,187 m or 7,175 feet. The Muchinga Mountains, the watershed between the Zambezi and Congo drainage basins, run parallel to the deep valley of the Luangwa River and form a sharp backdrop to its northern edge, although they are almost everywhere below 1,700 m, 5,577 feet. Their culminating peak Mumpu is at the western end and at 1,892 m, 6,207 feet, is the highest point in Zambia away from the eastern border region. The border of the Congo pedicle was drawn around this mountain. The southernmost headstream of the Congo River rises in Zambia and flows west through its northern area firstly as the Chamshi and then, after the Bangulu swamps as the Luapula, which forms part of the border with the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Luapula flows south then west before it turns north until it enters Lake Mweru. The lake's other major tributary is the Kalungwishi River, which flows into it from the east. The Luviwa River drains Lake Mweru, flowing out of the northern end to the Lualaba River, Upper Congo River. Lake Tanganyika is the other major hydrographic feature that belongs to the Congo Basin. Its southeastern end receives water from the Kalambo River, which forms part of Zambia's border with Tanzania. This river has Africa's second highest uninterrupted waterfall, the Kalambo Falls.
Climate.
The climate of Zambia is tropical, modified by elevation. In the Köppen climate classification, most of the country is classified as humid subtropical or tropical wet and dry, with small stretches of semi-arid steppe climate in the southwest and along the Zambezi Valley. There are two main seasons, the rainy season, November to April, corresponding to summer, and the dry season, May-June to October-November, corresponding to winter. The dry season is subdivided into the cool dry season, May-June to August, and the hot dry season, September to October-November. The modifying influence of altitude gives the country pleasant subtropical weather rather than tropical conditions during the cool season of May to August. However, average monthly temperatures remain above 20 degc, 68 degf, over most of the country for 8 or more months of the year.
Demographics.
Zambia is one of the most highly urbanized countries in sub-Saharan Africa, with 44% of the population concentrated in a few urban areas along the major transport corridors, while rural areas are sparsely populated. Unemployment and underemployment in urban areas are serious problems, while most rural Zambians are subsistence farmers. The population comprises approximately 72 ethnic groups, most of which are Bantu-speaking. According to government surveys, fertility rate was 6.2 as of 2007, 6.1 in 1996, 5.9 in 2001 February. Almost 90% of Zambians belong to the 9 main ethno-linguistic groups, the Nyanja Chua, Bemba, Tonga, Tumbuka, Lunda, Luvale, Kande, Nkoya and Lozi. In the rural areas, each ethnic group is concentrated in a particular geographic region of the country, and many groups are very small and not as well known. However, all the ethnic groups can be found in significant numbers in Lusaka and the Copperbelt. Expatriates, mostly British or South African, as well as some white Zambian citizens, live mainly in Lusaka and in the Copperbelt in northern Zambia, where they are either employed in mines, financial and related activities, or retired. There were 70,000 Europeans in Zambia in 1964, but many have since left the country. Zambia also has a small but economically important Asian population, most of whom are Indians and Chinese. There are 13,000 Indians in Zambia. An estimated 80,000 Chinese are resident in Zambia. In recent years, several hundred dispossessed white farmers have left Zimbabwe at the invitation of the Zambian government, to take up farming in the southern province. According to the World Refugee Survey 2009 published by the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, Zambia had a population of refugees and asylum seekers numbering approximately 88,900. The majority of refugees in the country came from the Democratic Republic of Congo, 47,300 refugees from the DRC living in Zambia in 2007, Angola, 27,100. See Angolans in Zambia, Zimbabwe, 5,400 and Rwanda, 4,900. Beginning in May 2008, the number of Zimbabweans in Zambia also began to increase significantly. The influx consisted largely of Zimbabweans formerly living in South Africa who were fleeing xenophobic violence there. Nearly 60,000 refugees live in camps in Zambia, while 50,000 are mixed in with the local populations. Refugees who wish to work in Zambia must apply for official permits, which can cost up to $500 per year. The Europeans in the colony numbered 14,000 at the 1931 census and the Africans 1,400,000, or just 100 times as many. Of the Europeans, more than 10,000 had entered the country in the previous 10 years, since the census in 1921, mostly to work on the copper mines. In 1938 there were only 8 doctors in the entire country.
Languages.
The official language of Zambia is English, which is used to conduct official business and is the medium of instruction in schools. The main local language, especially in Lusaka, is Nyanja. However, Bemba and Nyanja are spoken in the urban areas in addition to other indigenous languages which are commonly spoken in Zambia. Others are Lozi, Kande, Tonga, Lunda and Luvale, which feature on the Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation, ZNBC's local languages section. The total number of languages spoken in Zambia is 73. The process of urbanization has had a dramatic effect on some of the indigenous languages, including the assimilation of words from other indigenous languages and English. Urban dwellers sometimes differentiate between urban and rural dialects of the same language by prefixing the rural languages with deep Most will thus speak Bemba and Nyanja on the Copperbelt. Nyanja is dominantly spoken in Lusaka and eastern Zambia. English is used in official communications and is the chosen language at home among, now common, intertribal families. If one does visit Zambia, it becomes evident that language continuously evolves and has led to Zambian slang which can be heard in daily life throughout Lusaka and other major cities. Intentions of introducing other languages, like Portuguese, into the school curriculum have been discussed by the government. French is commonly studied in private schools, while some secondary schools have it as an optional subject. A German course has been introduced at the University of Zambia, UNZA.
Religion.
Zambia is officially a Christian nation according to the 1996 constitution, but a wide variety of religious traditions exist. Traditional religious thoughts blend easily with Christian beliefs in many of the country's syncretic churches. Christian denominations include Roman Catholic, Anglican, Pentecostal, New Apostolic Church, Lutheran, Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventist, The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a variety of evangelical denominations. These grew, adjusted and prospered from the original missionary settlements, Portuguese and Catholicism in the east from Mozambique, and Anglicanism, British influences, from the south. Except for some technical positions, for example physicians, Western missionary roles have been assumed by native believers. After Frederick Chiluba, a Pentecostal Christian, became president in 1991, Pentecostal congregations expanded considerably around the country. Approximately 87% of the population are Christians. It has one of the largest percentage of Seventh-day Adventists per head in the world, about 1 in 18 Zambians. The Baha'i population of Zambia is over 160,000, or 1.5% of the population. The William Mutil Masetla Foundation run by the Baha'i community is particularly active in areas such as literacy and primary health care. Approximately 1% of the population are Muslims, with most living in urban areas, of which about 500 belong to the Ahmadiyya sect in Islam. There is also a small Jewish community, composed mostly of Ashkenazis. Notable Jewish Zambians include Simon Zukas, retired minister, MP and a member of Forum for Democracy and Development and earlier on the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, MMD, and United National Independence Party. Additionally, the economist Annie Fisher, currently the governor of the Bank of Israel and formerly deputy managing director of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, was born and partially raised in Zambia's Jewish community.
Economy.
The Bank of Zambia serves as the central bank which implements monetary policies for the country. The Ministry of Commerce, led by Minister Robert K. Sikinga, maintains statistics regarding the domestic and international trade for the Republic of Zambia. Presently, Zambia averages between $7 billion and $8 billion of exports annually. About 68% of Zambians live below the recognized national poverty line, with rural poverty rates standing at about 78% and urban rates of 53%. Zambia ranked 117th out of 128 countries on the 2007 Global Competitiveness Index, which looks at factors that affect economic growth. Social indicators continue to decline, particularly in measurements of life expectancy at birth, about 40.9 years, and maternal mortality, 830 per 100,000 pregnancies. The country's rate of economic growth cannot support rapid population growth or the strain which HIV/AIDS-related issues place on the economy. Zambia fell into poverty after international copper prices declined in the 1970s. The socialist regime made up for falling revenue with several abortive attempts at International Monetary Fund structural adjustment programs, SAPs. The policy of not trading through the main supply route and line of rail to the sea, the territory controlled as Rhodesia, from 1965 to 1979, now known as Zimbabwe, cost the economy greatly. After the Kaunda regime, from 1991, successive governments began limited reforms. The economy stagnated until the late 1990s. In 2007 Zambia recorded its 9th consecutive year of economic growth, Inflation was 8.9%, down from 30% in 2000. Zambia is still dealing with economic reform issues such as the size of the public sector and improving Zambia's social sector delivery systems. Economic regulations and red tape are extensive, and corruption is widespread. The bureaucratic procedures surrounding the process of obtaining licenses encourages the widespread use of facilitation payments. Zambia's total foreign debt exceeded $6 billion when the country qualified for Highly Indebted Poor Country Initiative, HIPC, debt relief in 2000, contingent upon meeting certain performance criteria. Initially, Zambia hoped to reach the HIPC completion point, and benefit from substantial debt forgiveness, in late 2003. In January 2003, the Zambian government informed the International Monetary Fund and World Bank that it wished to renegotiate some of the agreed performance criteria, calling for privatization of the Zambian National Commercial Bank and the national telephone and electricity utilities. Although agreements were reached on these issues, subsequent overspending on civil service wages delayed Zambia's final HIPC debt forgiveness from late 2003 to early 2005, at the earliest. In an effort to reach HIPC completion in 2004, the government drafted an austerity budget for 2004, freezing civil service salaries and increasing a number of taxes. The tax hike and public sector wage freeze prohibited salary increases and new hires. This sparked a nationwide strike in February 2004. The Zambian economy has historically been based on the copper mining industry. Output of copper had fallen, however, to a low of 228,000 metric tons in 1998, after a 30-year decline in output due to lack of investment, low copper prices, and uncertainty over privatization. In 2002, following privatization of the industry, copper production rebounded to 337,000 metric tons. Improvements in the world copper market have magnified the effect of this volume increase on revenues and foreign exchange earnings. The Zambian government is pursuing an economic diversification program to reduce the economy's reliance on the copper industry. This initiative seeks to exploit other components of Zambia's rich resource base by promoting agriculture, tourism, gemstone mining, and hydropower. Agriculture plays a very important part in Zambia's economy, providing many more jobs than the mining industry. Private local company ʻzæmbiɛ Product Limited is the leading agri-business in Zambia with over 4,000 employees, producing row crops, 5,000 ha irrigated, 1,500 ha non-irrigated, cattle, some beef, pork, master pork, chicken, ʻzæmbiɛ, eggs, ʻzæmbiɛ egg, dairy products, leather, fish, feedstock, novatk, and edible oil, ʻzæmbiɛ. ʻzæmbiɛ operates 8 abattoirs, 4 farms and numerous retail stores, also in cooperation with Shoprite, and a fast food chain, ʻzæmbiɛ, throughout the country. In 2003, exports of known metals increased by 25% and accounted for 38% of all export earnings, previously 35%. The Zambian government has recently been granting licenses to international resource companies to prospect for minerals such as nickel, tin, copper and uranium. It is hoped that nickel will take over from copper as the country's top metallic export. In 2009, Zambia has been badly hit by the world economic crisis. Zambia co-hosted the UNWTO 2013 General Assembly from 24 to August 29, 2013 and used the event to showcase its suitability for tourism and the meetings, incentives, conferencing, exhibitions industry. Zambia was ranked the 127th safest investment destination in the world in the March 2011 Euromoney Country Risk Rankings.
Social protection in Zambia.
Zambia officially has extensive social protection targeted at low-capacity households, including social assistance, protection, and social insurance programs, prevention, and programs to improve economic productivity, promotion. However, these programs face immense challenges and the actual coverage is very low and, in some cases, actually declining. Some analysts describe the program's coverage as patchy and transitory and not especially coherent or logical. Public works, such as push and cash transfers, are the main instruments used to protect consumption among low-capacity households by providing 1. Seasonal safety nets to address cyclical poverty and vulnerability at times of need by offering employment, and 2. Community assets that are beneficial for productive activities. In practice, however, the program prioritizes food transfers to areas affected by natural disasters where vulnerability is acute and infrastructure development has remained a secondary objective. NGOs also have implemented short-term public works programs implemented by NGOs, such as CARE's Agricultural Inputs for Assets, AICA, program. Social insurance initiatives, such as microinsurance, health insurance and other contributory schemes exist, but these are very limited in their membership. Formal sector workers are protected by well-resourced pension, sickness and disability benefits, but most low-capacity households, especially in rural areas, work outside the formal sector. The emphasis on protection at the expense of prevention and promotion means that households move out of poverty only very slowly because they are unable to invest in activities that have greater returns. They remain highly at risk of sliding back into poverty and applying negative coping strategies. A balance between protection, prevention and promotion, however, can only be achieved through more and consistent resources. Further improvements might also include improved implementation of existing programs and better coordination between different implementers and programs. Social protection for LGBT is non-existent in Zambia and any expression thereof is illegal.
Education.
In Zambia, the education system consists of both government and private schools. Historically, the private school system began largely as a result of Christian mission efforts during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In schools, a student may initially receive two levels of education: basic education, years 1 to 9, and upper secondary, years 10 to 12. Some schools provide a basic education covering years 1 to 9, as year 9 is considered to be a decent level of education for the majority of children. However, tuition is only free up to year 7, and UNESCO estimated that 80% of children of primary school age in 2002 were enrolled. In 2003, the adult literacy rate was estimated to be 80.6%, 86.8% male and 74.8% female. Zambia has a first OLPC, one laptop per child, deployment at the new Zambian library that is in traditional Zambian style.
Higher education.
In Zambia, there are 3 universities and several technical schools that provide higher education. The Ministry of Science, Technology and Vocational Training, MSTVT, in Zambia was also developed in 1992 to foster growth in technological fields. However, educational opportunities beyond secondary school are limited in Zambia. After secondary school, most students study at the various colleges around the country. Normally they all select students on the basis of ability. Competition for places is intense. The introduction of fees in the late 1990s has made university-level education inaccessible for some, although the government does provide state bursaries. Copperbelt University opened in the late 1980s, taking over most of the former Zambia Institute of Technology site in Kitwe. There are also several teacher training colleges offering 2-year training programs, while missionary hospitals around the country offer internationally acceptable training for nurses. Several Christian schools offer seminary-level training. There are 3 main universities and several others. University of Zambia, UNZA, Mulungasha University, MU, Copperbelt University, CBU, University of Lusaka, Unilus, Lusaka Apex Medical University, LAMU, Zambia Open University, ZOU. Additional centers of higher education: Public Administration College, NIPA, Northern Technical College, NORTC, Natural Resources Development College, NRDC, the Evelyn Hone College, University Teaching Hospital, Northrise University, Kaikankata Nursing Training School.
Health.
The Ministry of Health, MOH, provides information pertaining to Zambian health. In 2010, public expenditure on health was 3.4% of GDP, among the lowest in southern Africa. Infant mortality was at 102 per 1,000 in 2005. As of 2011, the life expectancy in Zambia was 43 years, up from 37 in previous years.
HIV/AIDS epidemic.
Zambia faces a generalized HIV epidemic, with an estimated prevalence rate of 13.5% among adults, ages 15 to 49, in 2009. However, HIV incidence in Zambia has declined by more than 25% from 2001 to 2010, an indication that the epidemic appears to be declining.
Hospitals.
In Zambia, there are hospitals throughout the country which include, Levi Manawasa General Hospital, Chapata General Hospital, Kitwe Central Hospital, Konkola Mine Hospital, Lubi Mission Hospital, Macha Hospital, Mtendere Mission Hospital, Muking Mission Hospital, Mwandi Mission Hospital, Mchanga North Hospital, Kaikankata Salvation Army Hospital, Kali Mission Hospital, St. Francis Hospital, and St. Luke's Mission Hospital. The University Teaching Hospital serves as both a hospital and a training site for future health workers. However, there are very few hospitals in rural or remote places in Zambia, where most communities rely on small government-run community health centers and rural health posts.
Maternal and child health care.
In June 2011, the United Nations Population Fund released a report on the state of the world's midwifery. It contained new data on the midwifery workforce and policies relating to newborn and maternal mortality for 58 countries. The 2010 maternal mortality rate per 100,000 births for Zambia is 470. This is compared with 602.9 in 2008 and 594.2 in 1990. The under 5 mortality rate per 1,000 births is 145 and the neonatal mortality as a percentage of under 5's mortality is 25. The aim of this report is to highlight ways in which the Millennium Development Goals can be achieved, particularly Goal 4, reduce child mortality, and Goal 5, improve maternal death. In Zambia, the number of midwives per 1,000 live births is 5 and the lifetime risk of death for pregnant women is 1 in 38.
Energy.
In 2009, Zambia generated 10.3 TWh and has been rated high in use of both solar power and hydroelectricity.
Culture.
Prior to the establishment of modern Zambia, the natives lived in independent tribes, each with their own ways of life. One of the results of the colonial era was the growth of urbanization. Different ethnic groups started living together in towns and cities, influencing each other as well as adopting a lot of the European culture. The original cultures have largely survived in the rural areas. In the urban setting there is a continuous integration and evolution of these cultures to produce what is now called Zambian culture. Traditional culture is very visible through colorful annual Zambian traditional ceremonies. Some of the more prominent are, Komboka and Kathanga, Western Province, Mutomboko, Luapula Province, NCWALA, Eastern Province, Lindi and Shimunanga, Southern Province, Lunda Lubanza, Northwestern, Likambai Liamise, Northwestern, Mbunda Lakwakwa, Northwestern Province, Chibulakumushi, Central Province, Akusfiapana, Northern Province. Popular traditional arts are mainly in pottery, basketry, such as tonga baskets, stools, fabrics, mats, wooden carvings, ivory carvings, wirecraft and copper crafts. Most Zambian traditional music is based on drums, and other percussion instruments, with a lot of singing and dancing. In the urban areas foreign genres of music are popular, in particular Congolese rumba, African American music and Jamaican reggae. Several psychedelic rock artists emerged in the 1970s to create a genre known as Zam rock, including Witch, Musi Otunya, Ricky Ulalonga, Amanas, The Peace, ʻzæmbiə Tembo, Blackfoot, and the Ngozi family.
Media.
The Ministry of Information, Broadcasting Services and Tourism in Zambia is responsible for the Zambian news agency, while there are also numerous media outlets throughout the country which include television stations, newspapers, FM radio stations, and internet news HIVAIDS.
Cuisine.
The Zambian staple diet is based on maize. It is normally eaten as a thick porridge, called nshima, Nyanja word, prepared from maize flour, commonly known as mealie meal. This may be eaten with a variety of vegetables, beans, meat, fish or sour milk depending on geographical location origin.
Sports.
Zambia declared its independence on the day of the closing ceremony of the 1964 Summer Olympics, thereby becoming the first country ever to have entered an Olympic Games as one country, and left it as another. Zambia took part in the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing. Football is the most popular sport in Zambia, and the Zambian national football team has had its triumphant moments in football history. At the Seoul Olympics of 1988, the national team defeated the Italian national team by a score of 4-0. Kalusha Bwalya, Zambia's most celebrated football player and one of Africa's greatest football players in history, had a hat-trick in that match. However, to this day, many pundits say the greatest team Zambia has ever assembled was the one that perished on April 28, 1993 in a plane crash at Libreville, Gabon. Despite this, in 1996, Zambia was ranked 15th on the official FIFA World Football Team rankings, the highest attained by any Southern African team. In 2012, Zambia won the African Cup of Nations for the first time after losing in the final twice. They beat Côte d'Ivoire 8-7 in a penalty shootout in the final, which was played in Libreville, just a few miles away from the plane crash 19 years previously. Rugby union, boxing and cricket are also popular sports in Zambia. Notably, at one point in the early 2000s, the Australia and South African national rugby teams were captained by players born in the same Lusaka hospital, George Gregan and Corn Cridge. Zambia boasts having the highest rugby poles in the world, located at Luanshya Sports Complex in Luanshya. Rugby union in Zambia is a minor but growing sport. They are currently ranked 73rd by the IRB and have 3,650 registered players and 3 formally organized clubs. Zambia used to play cricket as part of Rhodesia. Zambia has also strangely provided a shinty international, Zambian-born Eddie Tembo representing Scotland in the Compromise Rules shinty hurling game against Ireland in 2008. In 2011, Zambia was due to host the 10th All-Africa Games, for which 3 stadiums were to be built in Lusaka, Ndola, and Livingstone. The Lusaka Stadium would have a capacity of 70,000 spectators while the other 2 stadiums would hold 50,000 people each. The government was encouraging the private sector to get involved in the construction of the sports facilities because of a shortage of public funds for the project. Zambia has since revoked its bid to host the 2011 All-Africa Games, citing a lack of funds. Hence, Mozambique took Zambia's place as host. Zambia also produced the first black African, Madelitso Muthia, to play in the United States Golf Open, one of the 4 major golf tournaments,